PLD. PJ Campbell. 2 mediocre white dudes on film. Because frankly, we know you don't have enough of that in your life. So we're here to give you more. And without further ado, here are 2 mediocre white dudes on film. Greetings and salutations. It is not 2 mediocre white dudes on film tonight. It sadly is 1 mediocre white dude on film because PJ Campbell, my associate, my brother in arm, he has no power. So he was supposed to be here. He's supposed to be talking this with me, but we decided let's just move forward. Let's just go ahead and do it. We have so much planned. I don't want to get behind on anything else. Obviously, I've done a lot the past few weeks as far as pushing things off and as far as actually recording products and everything. So I figured I'd get this out there. I can preview it enough. It's going to be an interesting show nonetheless. Hopefully you guys will come along with me on this journey. This is a preview. This is going to be a Patreon exclusive show that's on PLD Projects. Bonus content for 2 mediocre white dudes on film. We already have the one show, 2 mediocre white idiots in a box, where PJ and I go talk Doctor Who for a long time. That's a lot of fun as well. But this is specifically to the Halloween franchise, which we are covering on 2 mediocre white dudes on film. We got up until Halloween 4, the return of Michael Myers. Yeah. What's up, Joe? What's up? Good to see you, Joe. Yes, I just said that PJ Campbell lost power, so it's just me to do my show on my own, but that's okay. This is a show where I'm talking about Halloween 4. We just talked about Halloween 4 on 2 mediocre white dudes on film. Next week, we'll be talking Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers. But I read a book when I was doing the history of Halloween franchise, getting ready for the mediocre white dudes on film coverage of Halloween. I read 2 books, actually. One's called Taking Shape. Second one called Taking Shape 2. And they're built by authors Dustin McNeil and Travis Mullins. And they give great insight into the franchise. I definitely highly recommend reading both of them if you're into the Halloween franchise like I am. But Taking Shape 2 is what inspired this podcast. Because Taking Shape 2 takes about 24, give or take, without counting it, about 24 not produced sequels for Halloween. They were pitches, they were scripts, they were written directions that the franchise was supposed to be going or possibly going, but for whatever reason didn't. But I thought it'd be kind of interesting to discuss some of these potential plot line, potential different directions that would have gone, and whether or not we would have liked to have seen it or not. That's the process behind it. It starts with Halloween 4. Otherwise, that's why you haven't seen me do anything for Halloween 2 or 3. The book starts with the sequels to Halloween 4 and goes forward. There's about like 24 of them if I tried to count last right. I might have not counted wrong. I'm not great at math. I'm often drinking. I don't know. But we're going to start today and talk about the 3 scripts, 3 pitches that took place before Halloween 4, what we got for Halloween 4, the return of Michael Myers, which, as you know, if you listened to 2 mediocre white dudes on film last week, you'll know that is my favorite, at least currently. I'm watching through it again. My favorite sequel from the Halloween franchise. My favorite Halloween, the original, is the pinnacle. That's the best. I don't think that'll ever be topped. Halloween 4 is my favorite sequel of the bunch, including and up until Halloween Kills. But Halloween Kills is something I did like very much. But we'll get there eventually too. But where are we here? First of all, I will put forth Patreon.com/PLD Projects. That's where you can join up with the Patreon for PLD Projects. We have a good crew. We have a great Facebook chat going. We do exclusive content. I'm going to do a little bit more soon. As people might know, I write for the Movie Trivia Schmodown. Me and PJ both write questions for the Movie Trivia Schmodown, which is unfortunately ending. If you didn't know that, I apologize for the spoiler, but go check that out. Spectacular coming. It's coming October. We have to write that and make sure it's a big blast. After that, my time will free up, so I will hopefully be actually adding more to the PLD Projects Patreon, getting some more of that content in. We do have a lot of fun there. I will say that. But this is one of those shows. I think they're going to be like this all the time. When it comes to a franchise that deserves some extra content potentially, it makes sense to do this. This will not be a long show. This is not going to be generally a 2 mediocre white dudes on film where we take 2.5 hours to discuss a 90-minute film. Especially going to be shorter today probably because I don't have my partner in crime to banter with. So let's see how I do on my own. Again, if you have any questions, throw them in the chat. If you want to talk about things like that, I'm always excited to talk to people. Otherwise, let's go forward. Where are we? We are at Halloween 4, like I said. I guess we're going to take it back just a little bit. We got out of Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. Now, Halloween 3, Season of the Witch took a definitively different direction than Halloween 1 and 2. They decided to shelve Michael Myers and they wanted to try the anthology approach, which is something that John Carpenter really thought was the best way to handle the franchise. Not have Michael Myers have a story under the Halloween banner where every year it would be a different scary story, a different horror tale, and just under the Halloween banner. And that was the plan for Carpenter. It actually brought Tommy Lee Wallace, who was heavily involved in the first film. He declined to do direct the second film after offer because he didn't like the script. And if you go back and listen to our Halloween 2 episode, you'll find that not many people in the crew actually end up liking Halloween 2, except for the one actor who I can't remember his name now, but he was in the show. And he actually said it was better than Halloween 1. He is definitely smoking crack. But beyond that, Halloween 3 comes along. Tommy Lee Wallace is enticed back because he actually does approve of this anthology concept. And I have to say, I actually like the anthology concept. I do like Michael Myers as well, so I'm glad we got more Michael Myers. I would like to have seen both happen. However, the failure, I don't think, was ever in the anthology concept. The failure was in the marketing. And back in the day, this is well before the internet, well before chat rooms, well before anything like that. This is the early 1980s, and everybody saw Halloween 3 and just assumed that it would be the continuation of Michael Myers, maybe Dr. Loomis, probably Laurie Strode. And when they didn't get Michael Myers or Dr. Loomis or Laurie Strode, instead they got Tom Atkins and a little Sherlock jingle, a Shamrock jingle, and an Irish warlock. This is not what they expected, and there was a little bit of a bad press, bad word. It was marketed as the new Halloween. I think in hindsight, it would have been smarter if they had gotten ahead of that, let everybody know what this was, what they had coming, that this was not a Michael Myers thing, and maybe it would have been a more successful film, because after a certain amount of time, Halloween 3 has gotten its lion's share of praise. It's a cult classic now. People are more and more saying they like it. And there you go. See, Robert Adams right there. Halloween 3, best of the Halloween series. Nowadays, Halloween 3 is considered to be if not a complete classic like Robert is saying, it's definitely got a strong fan base. So it's definitely the problems with the marketing of it. However, at that point, what happens? That's actually Robert. Yes. That's hi, John. Good to see you. A mediocre white dude. They should have been Halloween 3, Halloween 2. I mentioned that actually in our podcast. To see if they had done that as Halloween 2 instead, I think we could have gotten, maybe in every other film, we could have gotten a split off, a Halloween with Michael Myers and a Halloween anthology. It could have been happening that way, but they didn't. Instead, when Halloween 3 was less than successful, they decided, they freaked out. They freaked out. The producers freaked out and they said, we got to bring Michael Myers back. Everybody, hindsight's 2020. Yablans, the producer, Yablans was like, I can't believe it did that. Mustafa Khan was like, I can't believe we didn't do that either. We have to go back to the beginning. We have to go back to our roots. We have to bring Michael Myers back. Now, I love Michael Myers, so I'm glad he came back. And like I said, my Halloween 4 was my favorite sequel of the saga. However, it took a little while to get there. What happened was, going up to their Yablans and Akkad, the producers really wanted to make a 4, while John Carpenter and Deborah Hill, of course, the brainchild behind the first film, didn't really want to. There was a lot of different pressure on them. Carpenter was always pressured. He always felt pressured to continue the saga. He let them know quite a few times that he didn't want to do it, but he always felt pressured that they were going to make it without him. His name was going to be attached, so we might as well do something to at least try to make it watchable. And when you're little, how little? That's a good question, Reefism. When you're how little? That's what I want to know. Because I saw it when I was little too. But Halloween 4 was actually the first film I sat down and got to watch. I believe I got to see it in theaters. I don't remember completely, but it definitely was the first Halloween film I saw. Now, anyway, the producers were for it. Carpenter and Hill were against it. There were lawsuits involved. Eventually, Carpenter returned after being offered a multi-picture deal with Canon Films, which is contingent upon Carpenter overseeing Halloween 4 as a producer and then choosing a writer. Now, at this point, John Carpenter went to Dennis Etchison, who had written the novelization for Halloween 2, for Halloween 3, and also for John Carpenter's The Fog. Now, Etchison's draft is very intriguing in some ways. Some have some potential you've seen in the series. Sometimes I think pieces were used later on. That's the most fun that I've discovered from a lot of these sequels. That some things were cherry picked later on and put into future installments, or sometimes they're just completely ignored, and rightfully so. Let's go through some of the first draft that we are going to look in on. What we're going to do is I'm going to tell you about it. I'll tell you whether I liked what I liked about it, what I didn't like about it, whether I liked to have seen it filmed. Would it be a better attempt than what we got from Halloween 4? Spoiler alert, for the most part, for Halloween 4, I'm pretty happy with what we got. So we'll take a lot to urge me to go otherwise. The first part of Etchison Draft, when it takes place 10 years on, just like Halloween 4 does. No difference there. Haddonfield is paralyzed at the time. It's aggressively anti-Halloween. Trick-or-treating is banned. Now, this is something that they would actually explore again when talking about Halloween 6. It's something that makes a lot of sense even after 10 years, I feel like the Haddonfield, after 2 experiences at Halloween, they might be a little gun shy. They don't really talk about that in Halloween 4 generally. That's an interesting tactic. This does focus on rebellious teen Tommy Doyle and Lindsay Wallace. Lindsay has buried the trauma. She doesn't really talk about it very much, while Tommy is very angry about it. This, of course, does, again, you look forward to Halloween 6 with the return of Tommy Doyle. Paul Rudd this time, but it's kind of an interesting tactic to try this first. Let's see what this is. Look at Robert Adams saying they want to make Michael a ghost or spirit controlled by Jamie producers insist on. That's another one. That's one of the ones that was bandied about for sure. 4 to 8 years old. Good choice. Good times. I love seeing horror films when I was young. The Shining, the first horror film I saw, I think I was like 5 or 6. It freaked me out. Chris, I don't know, Chris. I don't know. I can ban you. Chris or Jake. I think Jake's got him beat only because Jake is more inherently evil. But that's another story. Okay, let's go back to the Etchison Draft. Of course, we got Brackett and Hunt make the return. Of course, Sheriff Lee Brackett, who I thought was criminally taken out of the story during Halloween 2 for really no reason. I get that. You see him with Loomis in the beginning. He sees Annie's death, and he has to go tell his wife, and all of a sudden he's just basically replaced Brackett with Hunt. It didn't make any sense. If you have the characters in place that were pretty well received, pretty good characters, why bother to just slice them up? And Hunt was always kind of seemed to be like not a fun character. He seemed like the jock who never left the small town, and it just wasn't as fun as Brackett was. Brackett, I feel like he felt like a sheriff of a small town. He was down to earth at home. You root for him. Hunt didn't really root for. So Brackett and Hunt return. They're calling in police reinforcements for the anniversary. Don't got any Loomis at this point yet. No Loomis. I guess maybe they weren't sure who is coming back at this point. Because you remember, Loomis was killed at the end of Halloween 2. I'm sure there was some attempt to know whether or not Loomis was going to come back at some point. So I know they definitely played with that. They played with Laurie coming back. This script does not have Laurie in it, if I remember correctly. But there is a script that did have Laurie in it later on. Of course, that had to be scratched because, quite frankly, Jamie Lee Curtis had announced that Halloween 2 is going to be her last as a Scream Queen. But either way, okay, Brackett and Hunt return. Interestingly enough, Michael does return home again. That's not really talked about. There's an inexplicable return at a pumpkin patch outside of Haddonfield where he gets to murder a friend of Lindsay underneath a mound of pumpkins. So it's kind of a cool description how he pops out of nowhere and Lindsay just starts falling under this big mound of pumpkins, or Lindsay's friend rather, goes under these big mound of pumpkins, and that's when Michael kind of returns home. I don't believe they really talked much about where he came from. Like exactly, did he just make it out again? Like it's kind of a strange return for Michael at this point. He just comes back. That's okay. I guess when it comes down to it, this is going to happen. That Michael Myers is back. Do you have to waste your time telling how? Sometimes it's nice. Sometimes it's nice. Either way, we continue back. We get the Lost River Drive-In outside of town. Now, this is mentioned in Halloween 2 at one point, and Lost River Drive-In has chosen to do a horror movie marathon, which angers the locals. Thanks, Chris. Love you too, brother. I really know 2 reviews. I've actually had to buy a bunch of them. I like buying them anyway, because I like having them. A few I haven't bought yet. I did just watch Halloween 5 on Shudder, so I didn't have to buy that one. But I do wish they would be available more. But anyway, back to the Lost River Drive-In. They had chosen to do a horror movie marathon, which angers the locals who, of course, banned Halloween. Another interesting take is they take a reporter from Halloween 2, Robert Mundy, and they use him again. So it's kind of strange that they're kind of like bringing back all these characters and try to make them work, even though they are very small characters. I mean, Robert Mundy was an extremely small character, but it's an interesting tactic, of course. He is trying to track down Laurie and goes to Smith's Grove and meets with an administrator named Dr. Stern, who we were eventually supposed to learn is Marion Chambers, the nurse from Halloween 1 and Halloween 2. Now, I don't know if the script just made a mistake calling her Dr. Stern, or maybe she got married now, or she's a doctor now. I'm not certain what happened in the last 10 years, but eventually this is Marion. And she somehow lets the reporter read through Michael's history. And we learn that Michael in Smith's Grove was feared as a dark god, the Lord of the Dead. And this place, we got a potential cameo for Loomis. They played a Loomis Michael therapy session. So I don't know if they're just going to get a Loomis sound alike, or if they're just going to get Loomis to come back just to do this voiceover. I guess it did have some great heightened Loomis dialogue, as I found out as I watched Halloween 1 through 5. You get a Loomis that gets more and more unhinged as it goes along. And as much as I like the first film, Unhinged Loomis is the most entertaining Loomis, that's for sure. Monty, good dude, as always, my friend. Good to see you. So we have him. So this reporter is getting the lowdown on Michael. Some great, like I said, some dialogue from Loomis. But most interesting from this script for me is that Marion tells Bundy that Loomis decided that the kid was an incarnation of some pagan druidic cult. The Cult of Thorn, maybe. This is where maybe the beginnings of the Cult of Thorn are embroiled. Maybe this is where that comes from. Now, that's a good thing or a bad thing, depending on your taste. I know most people don't like the Cult of Thorn. A lot of people don't like the Cult of Thorn, but there is a small cult that does like it. All right, so next we go back to Michael, who's just in this pumpkin patch, killing and bloody trek across town. You got your death scenes. He ends up going to the drive-in. That drive-in where everything's, where all the horror, of course, is. Now, this kind of have been kind of cool. Some things I did learn about this. And Michael ends up slaughtering most of the whole drive-in audience, going car to car. And the sounds are all covered up by the horror movie screams, of course. They know no one really knows what's happening until it's far too late. One cool visual that was mentioned, I'm not sure how they would have gotten away with it, is that one of the films they were watching was a Friday the 13th film. So you'd have a Friday the 13th playing on the screen that's on the screen. And we'd be seeing Jason kill somebody in the drive-in while Michael kills somebody in the audience. That would have been like, talk about multiverse in the 80s, right? Come on now. Yeah, hey, I get that. The cult was not, I get that. The cult was not exactly a love thing. I do think we're going to have talks with a guest who has some things to say about the cult for sure, but we'll get there. I don't want to announce that too soon. Back to the script, we do get Brackett and company to the rescue. Brackett and Hunt come, they open fire. Now, this is the weirdest angle of this. Like, there is this, all of a sudden, they open fire, Michael doesn't die, okay? That's not entirely shocking. This has happened a few times, but it seems like this is like assault, like the end of Halloween 4, and he's not dying. But here, the bullets make him stronger, and somehow he grows over 12 feet tall. I don't know. I don't know what they're talking about. I don't know what they're doing here. I don't know what there's no reason why he gets shot and he grows to over 12 feet tall. We got a giant Michael Myers now. We are throwing any sense of realism out the window at this point. And I know I say that kind of laughingly. I say realism about a slasher film. But Halloween was very grounded. Halloween 2 was the beginning of more supernatural little bits and pieces. Obviously, he did survive, obviously, now getting stabbed in the eye and getting blown up and all that stuff. He already survived getting shot 6 times by Loomis at the end of the first one. But it's all kind of like stretching the belief. Now, this, though, I don't even know where it was coming from. I don't know where it's going. They don't really talk about it much. But eventually, there is a gas tank struck during this barrage. Big explosion. All of a sudden, Michael is really nowhere to be found at this point. Eventually, Tommy and Lindsay end up leaving together. They have sequences with their parents. At one point, Lindsay's been, again, like I said, Lindsay was buried the trauma. Tommy was really weird. Going back through it, there was something. Lonnie was mentioned again. Lonnie from the first film, who of course came back during the 2018 trilogy. And interestingly, in a nod to Halloween 3, there was in the script some kid singing the Silver Shamrock jingle. during some revisions, we mentioned some revisions. We went back through it. Etchison revised, and during the third and final draft, they ended up dropping Brackett again. So it ended up being all Hunt. Why? I don't know why you drop Hunt. Drop Hunt. Keep Brackett. A big fan of Lee Brackett. Always been a big fan of Lee Brackett. That's why I'm glad he's back in the 2018 trilogy. Who else we got here in this? We had Leah, who was an original character. Wasn't kind of like a mean girl, didn't like to be seen with Lindsay, but she, of course, accepts homework from her. She kind of seems like she's a normal girl, maybe kind of a precursor to Rachel Carruthers, who we do see in Halloween 4, one of my favorite final girls in horror. She does eventually help Lindsay get to the drive-in, but Leah's killed by Michael, of course. We do get a lot less Michael on the script from what I've seen. Although there was an interesting opening. I know that if Monty, if you're still out there, there's an interesting opening in this script that had Michael. You saw Michael suiting up with the mask and the jumpsuit, almost kind of like he was suiting up like Batman was. I don't know if it's a nod to Batman or what. I mean, it's not quite that time. I don't know. It seems interesting. Kind of funny, kind of weird. I kind of wouldn't mind seeing that. I don't know if I want to keep it, but the idea of seeing that's kind of amusing. So they did have this like weird attempt to distinguish between Michael Myers and the Shape, as if they were not one of the same. Michael had died maybe in Halloween 2, but the Shape had lived on. It was very vague and didn't really explain what they meant by that. I kind of feel like that was the idea of them going more supernatural. John Carpenter actually really did like the script. His quote from it said, "It was an excellent script, but it didn't include Michael Myers. The premise was that adults' fear caused the Shape to reappear. He was created by the dark side of the adults in Haddonfield by their fear of life and of something different." Which actually, to me, reminds me more of Nightmare on Elm Street, right? It kind of feels like it's bringing Freddy back. It's kind of that kind of vibe from Carpenter. So it's an interesting quote from him, and it's interesting to see where that would have gone if they had gone that route. Most interestingly, Tommy kind of came off like an asshole. He got pissed, and he thought that the town was using Michael Myers to control the town. He was like lashing out. At one point, he got arrested wrongfully, but instead of like just protesting his innocence, he ends up stealing Hunt's gun and turns it on him. And at one point claims to have watched Michael Myers burn to death, even though he was never at the hospital. He was called out in the scripts. It's kind of very vague why he's doing this. But he kind of was like, "Oh, Michael Myers is dead. Michael Myers is dead." And all of a sudden, Michael Myers is alive at the end. Instead of like apologizing, he's kind of like, "Well, I guess I'm wrong. Let's get out of here, Lindsay." And they leave. It's kind of a weird script. Could have been interesting. Michael Adams, I don't know. That's a good question to ask. I don't know who got that far. It's just in the script, or at least the Halloween Batman cut. I like to say it. Jason Goes to Hell is another thing. Exactly. Another one, Robert. Yeah, just like that. Jason Goes to Hell, the fear brings him back to life in a way. But anyway, this script was killed. It was killed by Yablans and Akkad. Akkad eventually at that point ends up purchasing Carpenter and Hill's stake and eventually gets Yablans as well. It ends up being Mustafa Akkad in charge of everything. And that's the end of Carpenter and Hill for a long time in the Halloween franchise. Carpenter finally got his wish to get out of the way, not have anything more to do with it. He still obviously has the theme by, the created by, but he wants nothing more to do with it. That's where we are. So we go back to round one. They get a new draft for a new Halloween 4. This one we call the Kenny and Medina draft. It's Daniel Kenny and Mark Allen Medina. Now, this pitch is a little bit more different. This is a very, very 80s pitch, which I very much like. I would want to have seen in a way, but I think it would have been an absolute train wreck in the worst way possible. It would have been so cartoonish but it would have been amusing as hell, especially if you were imbibing on things, I would say. Quick note, there's an episode of the 90s TV series Millennium where Special Agent Frank Black Landshanger's profile Michael Myers. Interesting. I'll have to go back and see that. I do like that show, Millennium. So, and Montyverse, yes, we'll talk about that next week when PJ and I, hopefully PJ has power tomorrow, and we can record our episode on Halloween 5. Yes, they definitely did Rachel dirty, and for no reason. It's one of my biggest angry moments with Halloween 5, and I'm not exactly a fan of Halloween 5, to be honest. That's a little spoiler before Wednesday's show. Although I will say I did actually like it a little better this time through than I had previously. Still think it's one of the worst of the franchise, but we'll get there. You got a lot in 80s horror series. Yeah, that's true. So in this draft, the Kenny Medina draft, Loomis and the Shape survive the explosion of the hospital at the end of Halloween 2. They are flown by helicopter to a burn center in Chicago. Now, somewhere along the way, in a, of course, plethora of coincidences, the safety cable on Michael Myers' stretcher is worn. It snaps. Michael Myers tumbles out of the helicopter into Lake Michigan. Of course, his body is not recovered. Shocker. Now, this is where the interesting thing comes to play, is that in this draft, we have Laurie strode in the draft. So I don't know if Mustafa Kaz never said that Laurie wasn't going to be in it, Jamie, and they just assumed that Jamie Lee Curtis was coming back. They hadn't heard the news, but they wrote with Laurie involved, which is an interesting take on things, of course. And yes, Robert, that's exactly true. When they killed Nightmare, Survivors from Nightmare 3 in the beginning of Nightmare 4, I hated when they did that. I thought it was stupid. I thought it was the worst thing you do. You built a film dealing with these people, and then you just kill them off in the beginning of the next. Why? You already live with them. You already did the groundwork. By the way. So after this is over, after we see the Loomis going to Chicago and Myers tumbling into Lake Michigan, we get a montage of Laurie dealing with it in a psych hospital, and Michael Myers is assumed dead. 10 years have passed. Laurie has married. Her name is now Laurie Jameson. I love that, Jameson. Lives in Chicago with a husband and a 6-year-old daughter, and she's an editor of a magazine called Real People Magazine. Her husband's teen sister comes to visit from California while Laurie gets to prepare for a high-profile cover story on a rock star of the time. And in an interview in Taking Shape 2, the writer says that in his mind, he envisioned Sammy Hagar, who, of course, at that time was big from the 5150, from Van Halen, the early Van Halen era at this point. His early Van Halen era, I should say, had his solo career. Sammy Hagar was what he had in mind. It's interesting to read the script knowing that. Now, during this, Laurie is suffering from dread, uneasy nightmares. She has a lot of panic attacks. She's repressed Halloween 1 and Halloween 2. And she then meets with her psychiatrist, which, surprise, and the big reveal is that her psychiatrist is Dr. Loomis, which gets to bring, of course, Donald Pleasence back in. And that actually blows my mind a little bit. I kind of sort of like it. I don't know how ethically that works, considering how involved he was in the trauma. But for 80s horror, I think it works great because you get to see Loomis from he gets Michael's side, he gets Laurie's side. It's a definitely way to get the characters more involved because, as you know, they didn't really have much interaction in the first two films. At the very end of Halloween 1 and the very end of Halloween 2, we get that. So we have Dr. Loomis helping her remember. He's trying to help her. Because Laurie's blocked it out. He's trying to get her to remember it so that she can deal with it and she can really make her really move on in a more positive fashion rather than just repressing it, trying to help her confront it. But Laurie seems frightened about Michael Myers coming back, and Loomis, of course, fears this too because he knows that he never made it to the Chicago Burn Hospital. At this point, Michael, of course, does appear. No real shape or reason. He does end up murdering Sammy Hagar. And Laurie was going to interview. And here we go. This is where it starts getting a little strange. Michael Myers kills Sammy Hagar and steals Sammy Hagar's Porsche 928S, which he then decides to use to stalk Laurie. Yeah. I mean, I know Michael drives. We saw this is the station wagon, and he obviously got taught to drive at Smith's Grove, as Dr. Loomis so amusingly says. But I don't know, something about Michael driving a Porsche just seems very 80s and very wrong. But a weird thing is, he goes to stalk Laurie during the script. At some point, he sees a sheriff, and for some reason, just ends up driving into him and then crashes into his car and some pedestrians that are outside of a movie theater seeing a movie called Halloween 4. They're trying to be meta. They're trying to be meta. It just seems like it's strange to me. So we have this idea. Laurie, at some points, develops some photos that she's taken. At one point, she sees Michael Myers in the background of one of those photos that she develops. And I notice that Michael's been in her life stalking her at some point. At the same point, Loomis is starting to figure things out as well. He goes to exhume the grave, finding the casket empty. This is kind of vague to me. I kind of feel like, did he not know that the body was lost? Or they just never say it? They just assumed he was dead. They just said, we're going to hide this and toss this under the rug. It's kind of not clear in the draft at this point. But Loomis definitely discovered that the casket's empty. And we get the shape makes his way to Laurie's house, murders the teen sister, of course. So that's why the teen sister's there, to get killed. Impressively enough, they use a garbage disposal to kill her. That is a tried and true Halloween kill. that happened at H2O. Of course, you've seen the trailer for Halloween Ends. That's another attempt at garbage disposal killing. But this is the first time I guess we see it is in this draft. So maybe this is something that they picked up later on, went from it. Who knows? But so he's chasing Laurie's young daughter around. The shape is chasing Laurie's daughter around. When Laurie gets home, we find that her husband is stabbed to the wall, just like Bob in Halloween 1, like right against the wall. And Laurie battles Michael to protect her daughter. Eventually lodges a poker in his skull, runs her down in her BMW. At some point, eventually knocks him into a pool where he pulled himself off with a down cable, and it ends up being electrical. And he basically gets electrocuted because Loomis shows up to witness it. Basically, Loomis crashes into some electric poles himself. A lot of electricity going on at the end. Of course, it seems like it's kind of strange. At the end of the draft, Michael Myers' entire body explodes. I guess this guy's saying we're not going to have Halloween 5. This is it. Like they say every time, this is it. It's interestingly enough. Now, Laurie's daughter obviously is a precursor for what we would get in the film. Obviously, Jamie, who's in Halloween 4 and 5. And this is the precursor to that. It's interestingly enough. Now, afterwards, there was another draft done by this when it was determined that Jamie Lee Curtis wouldn't be involved. And they basically took Laurie out. They amped up the teen sister's role somehow. And basically, guess she had all Laurie's work and they made her older. I don't know how they actually finished that up, because without Laurie in there, not much of the story actually makes a whole lot of sense. I guess you're still going after Laurie's daughter, but the whole idea of how Loomis is involved, I know that Loomis became a little more bulked up and Loomis is the one who kills her at the end. Or kills Michael at the end instead of being Laurie or Heather in this case. Which makes it interesting, though. I guess the one good thing about this draft was that Laurie was the one doing the killing at the end, instead of being the damsel in distress like she was in Halloween and Halloween 2. She's the one who ends up killing Michael Myers in this draft. And Loomis is, like I said, more of a witness. But this was also thrown out. Not sure I forget exactly why I read it, but I forget exactly why they threw it out. But it was not used. They decided to go again at one point. Let's see if I remember correctly. Yeah, we have one more draft to talk about, and this one actually is written by Shem Bitterman from a concept from Dahani Lipsius, Larry Ratner, and Benjamin Ruffner. It's an interesting thing if you don't know the name Shem Bitterman, because he actually was credited for Halloween 5, even though he didn't do a whole lot of work on Halloween 5. It's kind of interesting that he got more work on Halloween 4, I think, than he did on Halloween 5, really. It's a very interesting case at all. But for whatever reason, we move on to that one, and Shem has a slight difference in a lot of the ways he went through them, but there was also some similarities as well. I'm not going to lie. Again, we're focused on Laurie's daughter, which actually became obviously a big push for the whole idea to do Halloween 4. If Jamie Lee Curtis wasn't going to be in there, they had the sister. Of course, they had the sister angle where Laurie Strode was Michael Myers' sister. So it became this whole family thing again. Of course, a lot of people don't like the family angle, but it was what they were basing it on at this point. So they kind of couldn't retcon it. And it was always the crutch they could use to get Michael to wherever they were. It's an interesting take. Loomis is definitely also heavily involved in the Bitterman draft, because after Jamie Lee Curtis was locked out, they did lock in Donald Pleasance. And so if you have Sam Loomis, then you're going to do what they did actually in Halloween 4 and 5, which is going to make Loomis be the main antagonist. You can have the daughter like Jamie, have Rachel as the final girl, but the war is really at this point between Loomis and Michael, much like it is between Laurie and Michael in the 2018 versions. So what we have here, one of the people involved in the script, the Bitterman draft, Ratner, does say that the end of Halloween 4 that we did get did start here. They did have the daughter attacking a relative at the very end, and this is the first time we got to see that take place. This obviously, a lot of this made it to Halloween 4. So that's definitely a starting point for what we did get. We did have a place where we get to open up in Smith's Grove for the tour. Again, that sounds familiar, right? That's exactly how Halloween 4 opens. We get an entire unit that was dedicated only to Michael Myers. Loomis actually is in this part. Instead, right in the beginning, instead of like not coming till later on, he states that Michael Myers has survived but hasn't physically moved in 10 years. Loomis, and it's in here that Loomis is actually one that fucks up and says that Michael Myers' relatives were killed in a car accident, except for an adolescent niece, which makes Michael Myers' hand twitch. Again, this is all stuff that we get in Halloween 4, just a little different. In Halloween 4, we got Loomis isn't there. It's these two doctors who are moving Michael Myers from one hospital to another, but same type of thing. He lets it slip about the niece who's living in Haddonfield, and the hand twitches. And this one, the shape ends up killing two romantically involved nurses and escapes with their keys. Interestingly, a traveling preacher will pick up Michael Myers, mistaking him for an apparition of divinity, and Michael decides to kill him and his dog. What does Michael have against dog? That's what I want to know. Every movie, Michael has to kill or eat a dog. I know he eats them, so maybe it's just kind of a hungry thing. Maybe it's just his favorite food. I don't know, but he always has to kill the dogs. It's very sad. Very sad. Moving on, we have a waking up 6-year-old Amanda Hatch, who is Laurie's daughter. Obviously, this is much more in terms of Halloween 4. We do have, this is the Jamie prototype, and she's comforted by her foster sister, Linda, who is obviously at this point the Rachel prototype. The interesting angle we have here is that Amanda is very warped in her minds and really thinks that Michael Myers is being unfairly characterized. Basically, it's like he's just misunderstood. He's not even that bad of a guy. He can be our friend. It's a very interesting take. I guess back in the 80s, it's something you would see happening more and more. Again, without the internet, without all the barrage of videos and talking heads and everything else. All you know is that your uncle got involved in some kind of terrible thing. Maybe he killed somebody. She just wants to believe in the best of them. I guess you could believe it. I mean, she's only 6, so maybe that's something. But anyway, Loomis discovers Michael Myers gone. Of course, he goes. Haddonfield, he knows exactly what's going on. Interestingly enough, the Michael Myers house is bought already, and some people are living there. Much more like in terms with the Halloween 2018 characters. This time, the couple is killed by Michael, who goes back to the house. Amanda goes into the house, of course, and does not see the couple. He's just looking for Mike. She's just looking for Michael. But while she's there, Linda, who is the Rachel prototype, is with Amanda. They visit the Meyer house. I don't remember why they visited the Meyer house in the draft that I read. But they go to the Meyer's house, and Linda is attacked by Michael, but she escapes and finds Amanda downstairs. This is the funny part to me. In Michael Myers' old clown costume. Okay, so you're telling me your young kid kills his sister, and then you're just going to keep this Halloween costume, not in evidence. The cops aren't going to keep that in evidence or anything with the blood on it. You're just going to keep it down in the basement. And then they sell the house, and the clown costume is still in the basement. Okay. Well, Amanda's down there, and she's in the costume. At this point, they also find Judith's corpse, which is disinterred. Michael had gone to the grave, got Judith's corpse, and brought it back, and they escape. Somehow, during all of this, Amanda still believes in Michael. I don't know how this works out. I don't know how they push this forward. Maybe she doesn't see as much. I don't know if we'd seen it filmed. Maybe she didn't see hardly any of it, and Linda's just telling her most of this going on. Or maybe just Amanda is a little screwy in the head, and that's what they're going to go for. They do eventually find Brackett and Loomis together. This actually has Brackett in the whole time, which is great. Loomis. So I'm kind of thinking that they had Brackett in a lot of these scripts. I'm kind of wondering if behind the scenes, I never heard any real reason if they wanted to have Brackett back, or for whatever reason, maybe the actor didn't want to come back, and that's why we ended up getting Meeker instead of Brackett. I mean, Brackett and Hunt didn't want to come back, so they went with a different direction, which is okay because I like Meeker. And 10 years later, a new sheriff isn't out of the ordinary. Isn't something that seems to be unbelievable. We get to see Amanda believes in Michael Myers. But the shape over here, some of the plans they have that Loomis and Brack come up with. One of the plans that come is to get the girls, Linda and Amanda, to Brackett's isolated hunting cabin. While Brack and Loomis search for Myers. Michael Myers hears this, and he starts trying to find the cabin. I don't know how he finds it. Maybe he has Google Maps in his head, or Halloween maps. I don't know what that is, but he has it in his head. Who knows? Meantime, Brack and Loomis do the whole chasing down a drunk in a mask and discover it's not Michael Myers. This is a very much that happened in Halloween 2 with poor Ben Tramer getting killed. It happens in the real Halloween 4 when the three thugs dress, three pranksters dressed in Michael Myers mask. What I want to get is how these people how many like white William Shatner masks are around like this. I don't know, and especially in Haddonfield at this point. I would think that would not be something that they put on the shelf. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but either way, Amanda escapes at the cabin, and everyone starts looking for her at some point because she still wants to talk to Michael. Gets everybody out. Amanda ends up coming back and is face to face with Michael Myers now. And this is more of an interesting tactic to me. We get to see Amanda face to face. Linda starts trying to interfere at one point. Michael Myers knocks her out. And then Amanda, that actually gets Amanda pissed off. She's like, wait a minute. She finally sees something and starts yelling at him. It's interesting enough. Now we have the shape grabbing Amanda, makes her brush her hair like Judith was in Halloween 1. Linda wakes up and sees this and plays into psychology and brushes her hair, calling him Michael. And they stall long enough for Loomis to make it. Eventually, Loomis shoots Michael. Hold on 1 second for me. Excuse me. Eventually, Loomis comes back, shoots him. Amanda asks if Michael Myers is dead, and he says yes. Really? That's all it takes is another gunshot? How many times are you going to shoot this guy and you're just going to say he's dead? Who knows? It's a strange little angle. She then has a dream about seeing Michael Myers' face, jolts awake, looks out the window, and sees Michael in the distance behind the house. It's kind of a weird angle, kind of goes back and forth. Some of these angles, they switch things around. I know at one point when Loomis and Brackett get the drunk, Brackett has a heart attack when he discovers it's not Michael, and Loomis has to go to the hospital and swears to get Michael Myers for Brackett. Some kind of real, go get him for the Gipper kind of speech. Interesting enough. In one revision now, the most interesting revision I saw is that Loomis and Michael would kill each other in the final battle with syringes. Interestingly, I don't know. Well, all I gotta say, that's all of the three pitches I read, and I gotta say, as much as some of them are interesting, I actually think the ones that are closest to Halloween 4 are actually worse to a degree because they just don't quite have the right angle to go for. They have some of the pieces in place, but what we got from Halloween 4 is much, much better. That first one we got, as bizarre as it is, as bizarre as the 12-foot Michael Myers would have gone, with Carpenter on board, and with the idea of Michael being more of a belief rather than actual physical shape, I almost think that that's the way I would rather have seen this go. If I had to pick one of these three pitches, I would have gone with that one because that one has the most Carpenter-ish feel, and John Carpenter is a hero of mine, so I feel like that would be the kind of the coolest avenue to explore. It was the most different from the thing, so it wouldn't have been the same old. If I have one criticism of Halloween 4, there is a little bit of a cookie cutter safeness to it. So with that in mind, I'm glad with what we got, but that's the one I would have gone with. And Monty, that's a good point. Everyone knows bullets cannot kill Michael. He has two weaknesses: Paul Rudd and Busta Rhymes, trick or treat motherfucker. Yeah. The middle one, the rock star one, that would have been fucking nuts. And I think the thing is about all these films, I'm going to say it right now, I would love to see them all made because I love Michael Myers. So whether they would have been high up on my list of what I'd like to see, yeah, probably not. But overall, so all in all, Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers, we got what we got. It was the best of what we got. I'm happy we got what we got. But thanks for sticking around with me for a little bit. We got through some of the Halloween sequels that didn't happen for Halloween 4. The next episode of this show will be on Patreon, probably next week. I haven't made up a determination. I have to talk to PJ. Hopefully PJ gets his power back. But I hope you do listen to PJ and mine on Two Mediocre White Dudes on Film on Wednesday, as long as he gets his power back by tomorrow. Where we're going to talk about Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers. And PJ has told me already that he has made more notes on this film than any film he has ever done a review or episode or podcast on, because he's a lot to talk about. And I can see why, because it is a lot to talk about. Halloween 5 really took what Halloween 4 set up and swing and miss, really. But we'll get there. That'll be on Wednesday. But thanks a lot for sticking around with me. I appreciate you guys. Let me know if you need anything. Of course, you can find me at Paul_Denuzio on Twitter. You can find me on the Action Industries YouTube channel. You can find me on PLD Projects YouTube channel. We do class action every week on Tuesdays. Myself, Richard Eric Jarvie, and Matty Gunner. This week, we're doing the two Ryan Reynolds, Sean Levy projects. We're doing the Adam Project versus Free Guy. We're going to put those two up against each other at a couple of categories and see which one we determine is the better of the two. I'm hopefully going to get to my Queen podcast this week. No guarantee. It's kind of the toughest one for me to do. But we'll see the crown jewels. We'll talk about that soon enough. And I guess that would really deal with this week, guys. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. I'll see you next week. Take care, guys. Till next time. Stay mediocre. Always. PLD. PJ Campbell. Two mediocre white dudes on film. Because frankly, we know you don't